All right, let's get started. Today's lesson is on the Pythagorean Theorem. This is Josh. I'll be drawing some shapes, doing these lesson problems with you, and let's see where we're at. This lesson is actually pretty quick. By now, you're pretty good with the whole like squaring, square root kind of thing, which is why Pythagorean Theorem gets introduced in this chapter. Let me draw a shape real quick, and then we'll kind of build from there. All right? So, obviously, it's a triangle. There's a couple key things that you need to know about this stuff before you just jump right in. The first thing you're going to need to be told is that these are right triangles. And so usually what you'll see in the picture is you'll see this little box down in the corner. Now, hopefully you remember that and you're like, oh yeah, that means it's a right angle, 90 degrees and all that stuff. But you need to know that because wherever this is, and remember, a lot of these shapes are not drawn to scale. Like when I draw them in class, I go super fast, right? And the main thing that I keep telling students is look for that because the opposite of that, this other side right here, is always going to be the longest side of a right triangle, also known as the hypotenuse. And we need to know where the hypotenuse is because when we label things for the Pythagorean theorem, that comes into play. So I'm just going to label all my sides here. I got side A, side B, and side C. Now I specifically wrote it out like that because the Pythagorean theorem tells us that in order to figure out one of these lengths, we need to label these appropriately. I got side A, side B, and then side C. And we just kind of need to come to an agreement that side C is always going to be the longest side or the hypotenuse. And the way we find it is we just look opposite the right triangle, the right angle, I should say, and we know that that's the hypotenuse. The formula that we're going to use is going to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, now on this lesson, you should have a calculator. If not, just use your laptop or do something so that you can square root some of this information. Don't do it by hand. It's not going to work. Let's go through a couple of these, and then I think as you see them, you'll start to kind of figure out what the pattern is. All right, so on this first example here, again, I'm just working through problems from our book here. We're using this 2004 Common Core book here. It's all right. It's got some good examples. Let me fill in some of the numbers and then kind of go from there. So in the first example, they said this side here was 10, this guy is 24, and we're searching for C. Okay, now if it helps you to label these and say, oh yeah, this side is A, B, and C, then do it, right? If you want to draw your shape and then write A equals, that's fine. Whatever's going to help you work through this, I say do it. And then when it comes to solving this, we're just going to be plugging in our information where we see it here and then solving. So they told me that A was 10. Okay, so I got 10, which is now going to be squared, plus B, which is 24, which is going to be squared, which equals C squared. Now, I don't know what C squared is. That's what I'm trying to solve. I'm actually trying to solve for C, not C squared, but we'll get to that in a second as well. So let's just do some work here. I'm using the Texas Instruments TI-30X2S. Any calculator is going to work on this. I've used an old school 10 key, which is like, you know, the basic 1 through 9 and like a square root button and a plus minus. Totally works. Some people have these TI-83 pluses, like these massive calculators. I have them too because they're helpful, but this will get you by, all right? 10 squared is 100. 24 squared. Now, if you're good with the keys, again, this is why I like students practicing with a calculator because they get better at doing, you know, 24, just doing 24 squared rather than doing 24 times 24. You get the same answer, but you know, the faster you can use these guys, they're tools, right? The faster you can use the tool, the faster you can work through problems. So on this one, it does have an x squared button, which is kind of nice. And so you can just type in 24, push x squared equals, and it gives you your answer. Or you can do 24 times 24, same thing. And it's 576. Okay, now I need to combine like terms. 576 plus 100 is 676 equals C squared. And now I need to solve for C. I can't divide because this is c squared. If it was like 2c equals that, then yeah, I could divide both sides by 2. But because this guy is squared, I need to do the opposite of squaring, which is square rooting, right? So I square root this side, square root this side. So I have, let's see here. And again, it just depends on your calculator and how you put this in. All right, on ours, we have to push like the second button and then the x squared, which gives you the purple thing underneath. And then I type in 676 equals, okay? So c squared equals that. And then I square root it and I get c equals, this is a little bit technical here, plus or minus 26. Okay, now you might be saying to yourself, well, Josh, like, how do I know which one it is? Okay, I got plus 26 and minus 26 because 26 times 26 equals 676. But negative 26 times negative 26 is also 676, right? A negative times a negative is positive. So if you're asking, well, how do I know which one? Pretty easy, okay? We just need to remind ourselves that this length here cannot be negative, okay? It's a part of a triangle, so therefore we choose the positive value between the two, okay? Now some students might just go, oh, c squared equals that, type it in my calculator, the answer is 26, and they don't write the whole plus minus thing. This book does, but I have worked with books and other lessons in schools that don't do that. They're like, just don't even teach the negative side because like, focus on the positive, right? Sorry, that's a dumb joke. Focus on the positive, and that's your answer, right? Because you can't have a negative value anyways, so why even bring it up? I like to bring it up just because it's good math sense. If you're moving on in math, it's good for you to recognize that a c squared value can give you a plus minus answer. Okay, that's the main reason I like to bring it up, because this stuff is going to come up again besides just Pythagorean theorem. If that was the only time it came up, then yeah, I would just leave it as just do the square root, boom, 26 is your answer and you're done. Okay, so c equals 26, and at that point you're done. Circle your answer, move on to the next problem. Okay, so I guess I can, you know what, I'm going to rewrite the next triangle. And so the reason I label all that stuff, again, is just because I like to set myself up for success. I want to make sure that I'm putting everything in the right place. Really, the only way the book or the teacher, or however you want to say it, can confuse you with Pythagorean theorem is by just turning the triangle in all these weird directions. But there's nothing saying that you can't, you know, like the next problem we were given, the triangle is this direction, right? And then there's a little symbol right there. But let's say this guy was drawn, and it will be drawn like on homeworks. Like let's say it's drawn like that, okay? And you're like, oh, I don't work well when they're like that. Well, can you take the book and turn the book? Yes. Can you take your picture and just say, well, I'm just going to kind of, you know, redraw this guy like that. And then, oh, that's easy to work with, right? Because now I have my ABC and I can just keep going. Now, speaking of ABCs, before I do the next problem, does it matter which one of these two short sides is A and which one is B? The answer is no, okay? I just kind of I usually pick the shorter side as A, but honestly, there's no method or reasoning as to why I do that. It's just personal habit. Just pick one to be A, one to be B. The main thing is what I've already said. If you have a right angle, which you will, okay, and in order to solve Pythagorean theorem problems, you have to have that right angle, okay? The only thing you really have to do is make sure that the longest side or the hypotenuse is your C value, okay? A and B don't really matter. Some books like you to do the shortest side or the shorter of the two is A, but in the end, you know, you're going to be combining the terms, so I say don't worry about it, okay? All right, so now I got this guy. They gave me C, all right, and then they gave me one of the side, they said this guy was 7, and then they wanted me to solve for B. So I guess that's A. Okay? The nice thing is they did, you know, give me a B value, but again, like you choose where you want this to go. Some people, like as you're not given A, B's, and C's, you're just given numbers. Some people are like, I always take one of these numbers and call it A, and I always solve for B, right? personal preference. Do whatever works for you. Just because they told you this is A doesn't mean it has to go in that spot. Those could be B values and you're solving for A, right? It's okay to do it your own, you find your own way. But I'll follow the long, just because that's what they did. They said A was 7. So I have 7 squared, right? Because it's a formula. I plug in my value for A and then it's squared. Plus B squared equals 15 squared. Get your calculator. I was going to go reach for it and it's already in my hand. 7 squared is 49, right? Okay. Plus B squared, and then I got 15, which is what, 225. 15 squared is 225. Again, some of these you'll see a lot. 13 squared comes up a lot. 15 squared comes up a lot. 14, not so much. That's why you should really know you're up to 12, your math facts, multiplying all the way up to 12 times 12. You should know your 13s because it is kind of helpful and they show up on a lot of like weird algebra 1 types of problems and beyond. And then 15 squared, 225, that one does come up a lot as well. Probably just because it's easy to use and math books like to pick it. Okay, so now again, numbers on one side, variables on the other. Start to determine what you're going to do. So we're solving for X, or solving for B in this case. So I subtract 49, 225 minus 49 is 176. Okay, and now my last part is just to, again, it's B squared, so I got to do the opposite of square, which means I got to square root. So I square root both sides. I square root 176, and a lot of times you're going to get, let me redo that here, weird answers, or I shouldn't say weird, but like there's a ton of numbers after the problem, okay, like after the decimal. This one, I square this and I get B equals plus or minus 13.266499916, right? Nobody needs that information. That's way too much, okay? Stick to the basics, and if your book doesn't say so, I say just round it, okay? We know it's like 13.26, what does this book say? Round to the nearest hundredth, okay? So 13.266, but because it's a 6 after that, you could make this a 7. You could round it up if you wanted to. I personally say if you can get this far, you plug them into the right place and get your answer, good enough for me. I'm not going to take points off whether it's 13.26, 13.27, doesn't matter, okay? If you can do all this awesome math and get this far, that's great, okay? So I do my little square root thing here. I get my plus minus. It's not minus. So my answer, and again, it depends on your teacher and it depends on how you're being taught. I usually say if you're getting some random decimal like that, just say squiggly equals, right? It's about 13.27, 13.26. You could even say like about 13, okay? When I grade this stuff as a teacher, I'm looking for big points, main ideas. Do you know where to plug this stuff in so that you have A, B, and C, and then do all the work and solve? I'm not personally checking, oh, did you round the number correctly, okay? That's small stuff that can be dealt with later. Right now, main ideas. So, can you get to B is about 13, about 13.27? Good enough for me, okay? All right. So then the last one that I want to do here is just a little bit of a situation. They gave us this like sail of a ship, okay? And you'll start to see the patterns with this, right? You'll start to see that everything is a right triangle because that's what you need in order to solve the Pythagorean theorem or use that theorem. And so it's really a matter of just getting the right triangle, finding the hypotenuse. And once you've done that and you've started to label, like you're in good shape. So this one had a sail on a boat. Okay, let's see here. I'm trying to draw this thing. There we go. All right. This is an awesome picture, actually. I go pretty fast, but whatever. Okay, now in this one, they did draw this, right? So that you do know that that's your right angle. So therefore, this side is the hypotenuse. And then we got A and B. Okay. And they said this was 20. And they said this side was 10. Now, once again, if you want to do this problem and pause the video, I say that's great because that's going to help you learn all this. Let's see here. Over here on this problem, they just said this was h, like the height of the sail. Okay, and they were like, how tall is the mast? Okay, and so I don't know. Let's figure it out. Well, we know that this is the longest side. I personally, when you take quizzes and tests on this, I say just write the formula down and then just plug it in every single time, right? Just have it there as a template and then just keep using it over and over, or just write it down for every single problem. The key part is to write things in the right place. So I got 20, because that's my C, right? Longest side. And then I'll just say this is 10, just because it's like, I like to write the numbers first. Like I said, I don't know, whatever. And then I can make this h squared, b squared, x squared, whatever, right? The point is that we're following the pattern and we're solving for whatever letter they give you. Sometimes it'll be x, g, b, whatever. Just use whatever they have. If you want to write b, I'm okay with that too, right? Okay, so we get 100 plus h squared, 20 squared, oops, not 200, 20 squared is 400. Okay. Let's move all the numbers to one side. So we get h squared equals 300. H squared, do the opposite of h squared, or squaring something, which is square rooting it. Is that even the right way to say it? I don't know, whatever. And so we get h, we're gonna get another plus minus. And again, if you wanna skip the plus minus step, this book is teaching it, which is why I'm doing it. But honestly, nobody's gonna like hopefully take off points for you not writing plus minus and then going on and writing the plus answer. So I need the square root of, let's see here, square root of 300, which is 17.320500808. Okay, I don't need all that extra stuff. It says round to the nearest hundredth anyways. So I can just say h is about 17. Or if you wanted to, you know, because the book said to the nearest hundredth, you can do that as well. All right. Again, big picture. I'm all about the ideas and main ideas and the concept, right? It's about the process. It's not about, do you know how to round a number to the nearest hundredth? Okay. If you're doing complex stuff like this, don't worry about that last bit. So on homeworks and stuff in my class, I say, if you can get to 17 point something, good enough for me, all right? So we know that the height of this guy is about 17 feet, 17.32, whatever, something like that. I say, you know, and again, you could use B, you can use H, whatever, okay? All right, so like I said, when it comes to the homework, the only other thing that's a little bit tricky is instead of having the triangle nice and neat like that, is it might be flipped upside down or turned. The nice thing is, if that doesn't work for you, then turn the book, turn the piece of paper, take your picture and just redraw it so that it looks in a way, it shows up in a way that's going to be comfortable for you. All right. I do have a second video on this on YouTube, so check that out if you want to see more examples. Otherwise, plug away with this Pythagorean theorem. Take your time. Subscribe to my channel. Have a good day. Stay safe, and I'll be seeing you soon. Thanks.